thank you very much for agreeing to be on the podcast as a guest, and for taking the time out to talk to me.
You're welcome.
What I would like to know is just a little bit about you and your journey.
Okay, so I'm 43. I was diagnosed with stage one breast cancer in September 2025. It came as a massive shock. I don't think anybody expects to be given the news, that you've got breast cancer, but here we are. I noticed a lump in the summer, which made me go to the doctors. I did to and fro from it for quite a bit because I think in my head I was like, it's nothing. I'm too young to have breast cancer. You hear about all these ages, don't you, of it being older women after menopause. So I had no inkling, or no, even not even the idea kind of went into my head that it could be breast cancer, which I think is a shock. So I went through the usual process of going to the GP, going through the diagnostic checks, and then obviously to be diagnosed with stage one multifocal inductive invasive ductal carcinoma.
Okay. Well, that's the thing though, because you don't. We all kind of assume it's not going to happen to us. We all kind of. I've literally just recorded something for social media where I've talked about how until we're in it, we tend to treat cancer like Voldemort of Harry Potter. Like,
You do. You're almost oblivious to it, and you hear it because it
yeah,
suddenly just becomes a word, isn't it? That you hear, and I personally lost my dad to cancer, so we know kind of the effects and what it can have. But I don't think you ever expect it to happen to you, and especially at the kind of age I'm at, even now, it's still kind of a bit of a shock because it's like you have so many plans, don't you? And you like
yeah,
my kids are young, or say young, my kids are kind of in their teens, so you kind of have so many plans and future aspirations that you want to be around for, and big goal posts and stuff that you want to kind of be there to support them with. But it makes you put a lot into perspective.
yeah, yeah, it does. I think it removes the illusion of time. That's what it's done for me.
Yeah.
And it's just reminded me, and I think my family, that we're all human and we don't have an inexhaustible amount of time to put things off, or the time that I've got to be the mum I want to be, or just the memories I want to make with my kids, and then cancer comes in and just takes that, and it just shifts your whole perspective. And it's terrifying to remember that you're human, I think. And
It is,
cancer
and
is
I
that.
think I think I don't think anything. I don't think that feeling ever goes away either. Of kind of being diagnosed. When I went in for my diagnostics checks, they did actually tell me at that point that know, that they thought it was cancer. All the radiologists thought it was cancer.
Mm.
And I'd gone to this appointment on my own because, again, in my head, I was like, I don't want to waste my husband's time coming with me, or my sister who was here. Because to me, like, I'm going to go for these 2-3 hours. It would be a waste of NHS time, and I'll come home, and then we'll kind of go back to being normal. We had a weekend planned to kind of go away and do things. So I don't think you ever really prepare yourself for that. Um,
Yeah, yeah. No,
and
go on.
I think the shock of when he did tell me, I think time just froze. Like, I just remember my head just kind of being silent, and I felt spaced out. As in, have I just been told that I've got cancer? Like, how do you even digest that? And I didn't cry. Um, I think I was just a bit like, as you just said, that what's going on? This feels a little bit surreal right now. And then off I went, and the first thing I did was call my husband. And I remember standing in the car park of like Good Hope Hospital in Birmingham, just completely broken, like almost like wailing in the car park. And I think my husband was like, what the hell is going on? What's happened? And I couldn't even get the words out to say it. But I look at kind of where it started and where I am now, and I've taken every day as it comes. I had obviously the formal diagnosis that came, my treatment, because it was multifocal. I'd also already decided, obviously, I knew it was cancer at the diagnostic appointment. I did a lot of research myself. I'd spoken to my husband about things, and I think in my head I'd looked at the treatment options of what it could be. I'd even gone to the extreme of picking my chemotherapy wig, because I think for me, having to lose my hair and the thought of it was just a massive thing. And I think my husband was like, you kind of jumping the gun, like, just wait for the reason. But in my head, I think it had already taken everything from me at that point, and I think I just needed to get that power back again, because I am a control freak at the best of times. So for me, I think I needed to know what was next, what the potential treatment was going to be. If I was told that I needed a lumpectomy, how am I going to feel about it? If I was going to need to have a mastectomy, how did I feel about that? But having been told it was in multiple places at the time, they told me informally. I think in my head I'd already decided that, if two parts of my breast had come back as positive for cancer, then I was going to opt for a mastectomy regardless of what they said. And that, for me, I think that that was the kind of best option for me at the time. So going in to see the consultant, and him basically telling me that, there was no other option apart from mastectomy, I didn't actually feel sad about that. I didn't feel upset, because I think in my head I'd already decided that if both areas came back positive, I was going to ask for a mastectomy anyway. So I think just kind of being prepared for that moment and not knowing what that formal diagnosis was going to be, I kind of went in there, I felt so empowered, because I thought, I've actually looked into this and I've actually research what is good for me and how I feel about it. So I think the mastectomy side of it and the actual physical side of it and having to lose one breast, that didn't really upset me. I think it was more the kind of long-term effects of it, and like, am I gonna be free of cancer, or am I gonna have to go through rigorous treatment? Is it going to be with me for years? Is it going to be with me for life? Am I going to lose my life? I think there was a lot bigger things going through my head at that time.
Yeah, it's like my son's a full left leg amputee. His tumor was at the top of his hip, and when they said the leg's got to go, and that was just a couple of months in, and we were like, okay, just
I think
just do
sometimes
it.
you detach yourself, don't you, from the physical side? Because I think if anything, throughout this kind of journey, and I hate that word,
Mhm.
it's almost been like the mental strength has had to be a lot stronger than anything physical.
Yeah,
And the emotional side, I think, has been a lot more difficult for me than the physical side. Like, you wouldn't really notice anything different if people were to look at me from the outside. And a lot of people have said to me I look so well, and it just kind of goes to show that physical appearance is very different to
yeah,
internal and how you're feeling emotionally. But I have had a really amazing like support group. When I was first diagnosed, like all my family like gathered around me. They were there all the time. And it was almost like I didn't have to worry about anything, because everybody was there to kind of pick up the little bits and pieces of maybe what I'd be doing on a day-to-day basis, and they allowed me time to kind of deal with it in my way. I know that behind closed doors, what they were kind of going through was probably a lot as well, and I think that's quite difficult for me to kind of think about, because I know that there would have been kind of tears and emotions that they didn't show me, because they're trying to stay strong for me. And I think it works both ways, because even for me, I was feeling so much internally, but you kind of almost like not even scared, you just don't want to put that pressure on them to break down, or get upset, or actually tell them how you're actually feeling.
yeah,
But it did take me some time, and I did have to open up, because otherwise it does kind of destroy you internally, trying to keep everything in. It's almost like, how much can you physically take without almost erupting?
yeah, yeah. I think as much as we want to be able to take the burden from him, he refuses to let us carry it. And from the conversations that I've had, including with you, is that is a very common theme
Mm.
through the cancer community. So people that are being treated for cancer do not want to put it on their loved ones. Um,
Yeah.
and that's why on the top of my website there's like a lighthouse with a beacon, and it's made of lots of different people's faces have been treated for cancer. And I just make a point of, behind every image is loved ones that are just praying for a miracle. But on the other hand, my son says, oh, I'm not allowed to stroke his face and get emotional. He's like,
Mhm.
don't you dare, don't you dare. So we make fun of him instead because that's just our way of coping.
And I
But
think, sometimes you have to, don't you? Because I think it plays such a big part. And even I at that time I was kind of like joking around. I've been saying to my husband for such a long time that I want a dog, and he's adamant that we're not having a dog. It's too much responsibility. And I always used to say to him, you promised me to kind of fulfill every wish in my lifetime, and I'm going to die and I'm not going to have a dog. And I think straight after my mastectomy, I was like, well, you've got to say yes to a dog now. I've just been through it. And he was just like, no. He's like, your emotional blackmail's not going to work. So I was just like, okay, he's trying, but you have to kind of keep
yeah,
going, because I think if you stop and allow your head to take over, I constantly felt like I was fighting good brain, bad brain.
yeah,
It's one day good brain will be like, what, you're incredibly lucky, what, you're doing amazing, keep going. And then the other side's like, you could have died from cancer, or
mm,
it can still come back, and the fear of like reoccurrence and all the little things that kind of go through your head, and you're constantly just fighting. And it's like you get to a point where you don't want to do that. I'd quite happily just click my fingers and go back to the person I was before, but then at the same time I don't think that's ever going to happen, just because I think so much has changed within me,
mm,
the way that I see things, the way that I view things, and I think just my perception on things has changed quite a bit.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I love the thing that drew me to you was the way you celebrate being just doing things that make you happy, being with people that make you happy. And that I think is such an important message, not just for people within the cancer community, but the wider world. I mean, we tend to sweat the small stuff less because we've got bigger things going on. And the
Yeah.
people that are lucky enough to not live in this particular world, they do sweat the small stuff. And I would love to be able to gift them the perspective that it gives you without the stuff that comes with it. I would love to be
And
able
this is the thing, isn't it? It's only taken for this to happen for me to actually, like,
yeah,
well, like, me and my husband, like, we've built a great life. We've got two amazing kids. We've got an amazing family around us. My family have been absolutely wonderful throughout, like, my diagnosis, treatment, recovery, and even my healing journey. They've been with me on every kind of part of this. But it's quite shocking as well that at the start everybody's there for you. Everyone's kind of wanting to see you're okay. You have your treatment, and then I got told I was in remission, and everyone's like, oh, okay, she's okay now. And then it's suddenly, that's when you start seeing quite a lot of silence. Don't get me wrong, I've had people that I've reconnected with, from school, college, that have been amazing. But then there's other people that you think, were really close, that suddenly it's just radio silence. And it's learning to accept that as well. And I think it is quite difficult, because you give so much of yourself to other people, and then suddenly and don't get me wrong, I don't have an expectation that people should be at our beck and call, because that's not how we are. We're quite independent in that aspect, and I would never want to take help from people when we're capable of doing it ourselves. But sometimes I just think that you could have checked in with my husband to see if he was okay, or
yeah,
checked in with my kids to see if they were okay. And myself is, I'm an adult, I can navigate, or I'm finding and learning to navigate my way through this. But when
mm,
people don't reach out to my husband and my kids, I think that's where it really annoys me, and it really upsets me, because we would give, if it was somebody else,
yeah,
we would give our all. But then I think that's also for me to kind of retrain my brain, not to kind of have expectations of other people, and almost just build a circle that we know that will be there for us, or and it's reciprocated, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. The way I perceive that, I mean, even people that I thought I would be in contact with for the rest of my life have
Yeah.
vanished because they struggle to
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it?
accept
We
it.
have to, yeah,
Yeah,
it's not personal to us. I think it's just the fact that, a lot of people will struggle to deal with this kind of thing, or even
yeah,
having to go through it. I mean, even work colleagues, and, I was quite open about it at work. I hold a managerial position at work, and, people look to you, as that person, like, and you're almost kind of like the work mom.
Yeah.
and it's kind of like people like worry, and there was so much emotion in my team when I told them, and it does touch you, because I don't think you realize how many people you come in contact with, like on a day-to-day basis, and how many people, and you also kind of get a feeling of kind of what people actually think about you and how
Yeah.
people perceive you, before the diagnosis. And it did kind of hit a lot of people, and I think that made me realize that, oh my god, like, why are these people so upset? They've not even known me that long, but
Yeah.
it just kind of goes to show kind of what footprint you leave with people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the way I've kind of dealt with that. I mean, we didn't realize quite how um, fond people were of Jacob until we were told that he's now incurable. We can try and
Yeah,
extend his life as much as we can, but there's no cure for the cancer he's got. And people have just started coming out of the woodwork, people that we didn't really, oh, hold on.
yeah, or
But
people
then,
you wouldn't normally have that conversation with, or
yeah,
people you wouldn't really open up to, suddenly start showering you with kind of words of positivity, support. And it's almost
yeah,
like it's that hope that sometimes you just need. And on some bad days you'll get a message from someone, and it just helps pick you up.
yes, yeah. I think, and the people that do kind of struggle and vanish and they disappear off the face of the earth, I try and remind myself that it's a capacity issue. It's that they do not have the capacity to hold what I'm carrying, and that almost
Mm,
takes the I don't I don't blame them, because I think I would potentially be there with a hot meal, or an offer of a lift to the station, because although I'm Oxford, he's treated at Birmingham Children's Hospital. So,
yeah.
like, it's a long trip up for me, and people offer trips and stuff, and other people I just haven't heard from in 3 years. I just think by educating the wider world on what showing up looks like, we can potentially help change that, because it's just a lack of, even we get the language wrong. I try not to say a cancer battle, because that implies there's a winner and a loser. So I tend to default to journey, but people tend to, like, we use different language. So the wider world probably don't have a clue how to,
And I think that's it, isn't it? It's kind of like, how do you expect people to know what to say when, even like, I don't even know what I want to hear some days. It's like,
yeah,
I know that I don't want sympathy, because I
yeah,
don't need people to feel sorry for me, because
yeah,
this is the path my life has taken, and I will walk each day as it comes, and
mm,
deal with it. And I think the fighting force for me is like my family. I will do
yeah,
whatever I need to do, but it's almost like you said, sometimes it's not about people. um I had a lot of people that said, let me know if you need anything, but how do you
yeah.
explain to them that I don't even know
I
what I
don't know
need
what I
right
need.
now? But then on the other side, I had like friends turning up with, like, just shopping, and like, and it's like, we don't need anything, but they were like, well, just in case you do, like, and
Mm,
it's got really nice thoughtful things in there that I wouldn't even think about, or even snacks for the kids, just in case we don't get to go out shopping, or
yeah,
doing stuff like that. My friends just taking me out for like dinner or a coffee.
yeah,
Just leaving the house, I think, was just such a big thing, because suddenly everything, especially after I had my mastectomy. So I had a
mm,
single mastectomy, and sentinel node biopsy as well.
mm,
Um, so it was on my right side. So when I came out of surgery, I was obviously quite restricted. My sister had come to stay with me for that week, and my niece had come as well, to be able to support my kids and kind of be there for them as like the older sister, which was really really nice. And I think it was reassuring for me, still being in hospital, that my kids were being looked after. They had somebody there to kind of support them as well. And just hearing the following day when I came home that they were all doing TikToks and stuff, it made me feel happy that they weren't just sat at home thinking, is mom okay?
yeah,
Like, is she okay? And I think for me, I was just like, oh my God, are they going to be worrying? But the reality was, what, they had a distraction. And I think at that time, it was probably the best thing. And, those TikTok videos, I watched them, and I just think that I was sat there in hospital worrying about them, when in fact
yeah,
they were actually okay. So I think sometimes as well, I think we don't appreciate that, yes, they're children, but they have their coping mechanisms. And we have tried to be as open, like, with my diagnosis, we were very open with them and told them absolutely everything. I did get support from Macmillan with regards to kind of, explaining things to the children as well. So, that was really, really useful, because otherwise I wouldn't have had a clue how to even to start that conversation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
um
Yep.
it happened very quickly. I got diagnosed mid-September and my surgery was at the end of September. So while we'd already decided before my appointment that, you know what, we're going to have a week for us to come to terms with it, as in me and my husband, and then what we'll do is then we'll break it to family, and we'll start kind of the process of telling people. But my surgery was like 2.5 weeks, well, just under 2.5 weeks after I was told. So we didn't have a week to tell
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
And I think when we got home, we were like, how are we going to do this? So literally, I think we got back from the appointment about 11 o'clock. And the kids got back at 3. So we told them at like 3:30 they got back. We told them at 4 o'clock. And it was kind of just like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Then we went to, tell all the family and stuff. And I didn't have the heart to tell my mom that day. So we'd gone the following day, and my brother and sister-in-law had come with us as well. But I think I think in your head, like before the appointments and stuff, of knowing that, something big is going to happen and it's going to be life-changing, I don't think you can navigate through how, like, you can have a plan with the best intentions, but then suddenly as things start happening, that plan, it doesn't
Yeah.
happen. And I
Yeah.
think for me, I was like, I just need to, I want to tell everyone today, because I need to rip this plaster off, because I couldn't keep going through that emotional, and it's a big emotional load as well when when I'm trying to speak it. My husband, obviously, it was just as hard for him to kind of talk about it as it was for me. But I just needed to rip that plaster off. So we did tell everyone, and I think by the Wednesday, I'd felt emotionally drained.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my appointments pretty much started on the Friday of that week with my pre-op appointment at the hospital, and it's kind of just like I hadn't even really had a chance to focus on that.
Yeah. You hadn't really had a chance to process it for yourself before you had
Yeah.
to start.
And I think, and do you know what? I think when I had my diagnostic appointment at the hospital, a couple of weeks before, at the end of August, I was so angry at the consultant for not being empathetic and kind of like breaking it to me the way he did. And I was so upset, and I was like, I don't want to see that consultant again. Like, the way he delivered it, there was kind of no emotion. There was no, like, regard of the fact that I was on my own. But then looking back, he was just being honest with me, and he was just being realistic, not sugarcoating anything. And I think at the time I felt like, oh my God, he's such a horrible man. Like, why did he do that to me? I was on my own. I wasn't ready to hear that, like, everything. But then I think, before the day we got told officially what it was, I think at that point I realized that, you know what, that consultant actually did the best thing by telling me, because although I've only just had my formal diagnosis, I've also had 2 weeks to kind of come to terms with it. Even though I didn't know what it was, I didn't know if it was stage 1, stage 4, if it where I was at. It was still kind of something to tell me that, you know what, you are going to be going on this journey, you are going to have something to fight. But I just didn't know what the extent of that was going to be.
Yeah, it's almost like being told you're going to go on some kind of expedition with no map. You haven't got any kind of supplies. There's no survival guide for it. You
No.
have to just go, knowing that the terrain is going to change as you're walking it. So you can't, your brain tries to prepare yourself for it, and it tries
Yeah.
to like when you started researching and the different things that you did to try and prepare yourself for it, so because that's the only way you can have any kind of control over it.
It is, and everything's very quickly taken out of your hands. Like, I
Yeah.
talk about the appointments, and I remember going in for my pre-op appointment, and we was only up the road, and my brother came with me, just because, like I said, everything happened so quickly. My husband was going through quite a lot of big changes at work, and he had a meeting that he couldn't really leave, because the position he holds as well, he needed to be there to deliver the news to his team. So it was a case of like, fine, I'll go on my own. And then, my brother and my sister-in-law, they were like, you're not going on your own. And I was just like, but it's only my pre-op, there's nothing big. because in my head I was still kind of playing it down that, it's okay, I can like go, I'll be there, they'll do my blood check, they'll do my blood pressure, do whatever they need to do, and then that's it. And they're adamant that you're not going on your own. So my brother did accompany me to that appointment, which I think was really, really nice, because you don't really get to kind of have that time with like your siblings as much as you kind of meet up and you do things. And it was probably the worst possible thing to be doing with my brother, but it was just nice to kind of have that support, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. So my daughter is about to turn 18. She's thinking about university, and she's had conversations with me about potentially, not starting university yet, so that she can spend some time with her brother, because they're 2 years apart and they're really, really close. And
And
I've
you know
just,
what? And that's absolutely amazing. Like, be proud that you brought up a daughter that kind of puts, family
yeah,
first, because I think a lot of people forget how important family actually is.
yeah, yeah. I think it's all, if you've got the right support network behind you, I think the mental and emotional side of it is potentially easier than, I can tell when my son's in his own head about it,
Yeah.
and we tend to use humor as a way of pulling him out. I can't always do it because what he's going through is huge, but we're still there trying to, as opposed to, if I had the ability to go with everybody to every appointment so that they're not on their own, I think I would, because no one should have to hear that news by themselves.
No.
No one's identity should stop when there's no one in the room. And
No,
I think
get
that's
that.
almost, we had to tell him. They told us, and then we had to tell him.
How
Um,
old was he when he was diagnosed?
12, 12. You see, he's 16 now, but they didn't think we'd get this far. So every day we get beyond this, it's just a blessing, in my opinion. So
And I
it's,
think that I go back to what I said before, and I think sometimes the mental well-being side of it is a lot more important than the physical. So I think the physical, as long as you're kind of resting and you're doing what you what within your limits, you're
mm,
okay. But I think the mental side of it, the minute you kind of break down,
yeah,
people say mind over matter, and I think this is probably the first time where I actually believe it.
yeah,
Because I think if I hadn't have been so strong mentally, um with or without the support, I don't think I could have done this. And it's almost like you have to grab the bull by its horns to kind of try and navigate your way through this and be like, right, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do?
yeah,
Even on the bad days, just accepting that, you know what, if I need to sit there and cry, I'm just going to sit there and cry, because there's nothing out, I can't fight it, because the more you try and fight it, it gets worse. Or
yeah.
you have a really brilliant day that, what, I feel really great today, so I'm going to get out and do something.
Mm,
um or it's the little things. I remember, on day 3 after having, I don't think it was in day 3, maybe day 2 after my mastectomy, bearing in mind I'm left-handed, I'd gone downstairs and I just started emptying the dishwasher, because it's kind of like, I can do this because I feel okay to do it. And I did get shouted at by my mom and my sister, because, but at the same time, to sit around and do nothing, and I couldn't drive, I wasn't working.
yeah,
Yes, I was having people come in and visit me, but even that is, but I think people just have this image that, when you've been through surgery or you're going through something like this, you just need to rest, and that
mm,
looks like bed rest. But for me, having that bed rest was probably the worst thing ever, because I needed to get out and
yeah,
socialize and do things, see, like, just even just go out, just to go shopping. Yes, it was a little
yeah,
bit uncomfortable in the car, with the seatbelt. But I'm just like, I can't just sit at home and not do anything,
yeah. Yeah, I find
you
that's
know.
when you're quiet, or when you're sitting, because us mums very rarely get an opportunity to just sit. So when you're told you've
Yeah.
got to just sit for a week, it
Yeah.
sounds like a prison sentence.
It does, and I think it's quite funny, because if somebody said it, like when I'm working and you're in the throes of normal life and the kids clubs and everything else,
Mm,
you'd give anything just to sit down for 1 hour and just put your feet up or watch TV, have a cup of coffee, whatever it is. But then the minute I was told that, you're going to be off work for 2, 3 months,
mm,
you can't drive, you can't do your normal stuff, you're not doing the cleaning, you can't do this, you can't do that. It was torture,
yeah,
because I think the hardest part was the minute you sit down, your head starts.
Yeah.
and you start kind of overthinking things, and you start thinking about things that haven't even happened or aren't even going to happen, or you don't even
Yeah.
know what's next. And I think that's sometimes where I was like, need to keep myself occupied, because the minute I sit down and your
Yeah.
head takes over, it's horrible, because you have so much noise in your head, and so
Yeah.
many things that you're thinking about all at the same time, when in reality you probably don't even need to be thinking about a lot of what you're thinking about, or a
Yeah.
lot of what you're thinking about is probably not even going to happen. But
Yeah.
you do go into that fight or flight mode where you start thinking the worst and questioning a lot of the things. I remember just after I'd had my mastectomy, when I was at home, I was just like, and again, this is quite a horrible thought. But it's like, do I need to start writing letters for my kids' 18th birthdays, or the 21st, or their wedding days and stuff? And I think just the thought of
Yeah.
it was making me feel really, really like almost having silent panic attacks about it. But then I'm just like, oh my God, stop being so stupid, because you're going to be okay. And then it's
Yeah.
kind of like you just don't know how to navigate, because I think in an instant, my life changed very, very quickly. And
Yeah.
then suddenly I was told it was stage one. So when I'm looking at it and I've researched it, and I work in the NHS, so I've got friends who are kind of senior GPs, and when they say to me they got my results and I shared information with them, they were like, do you know what, you'll be fine after your surgery. Any other treatment, you're going to be fine. You'll go on to
Mm.
lead a normal life. And you're almost in denial, because you're just like, I don't believe you, but at the same time you trust them with your life. But
Yeah.
then at the same time, it's just trying to get your head around it, and try and kind of come to terms with, do you know what, everything is going to be okay. But how do you get yourself there mentally to actually believe what you're thinking? And I think that was probably the hardest part, is to try and kind of rewind my brain to not
Mm.
always be on kind of high alert that something's going to go wrong.
Yeah. That is a really powerful place to leave it. Um, where it's more of a mental battle. You've got things in place with doctors and medicine, but mental health support and emotional support for the rest of it, the
Yeah,
mental health battle that comes with a diagnosis and treatment and after, um, needs more. We need more of that. Thank you very much for coming on and for sharing such a
it's
powerful
okay.
message.